All right, friends. Here we go. Good morning. We're recording. Happy to have you here to have this conversation. Just want to take a moment to just recognize we are doing a whole bunch of ways of helping you all navigate this challenging time. We're calling that rapid response. We have many more things that are scheduled on our website. You can find them under what we call special briefings on our website. You can also find them right off our homepage. We're going to try this new, in addition to classes like this, we're going to try this thing called office hours, which are on particular topics where you can meet one-on-one on these different topics, and you schedule time with our team to talk about these different issues. So if those things are interesting to you, everything that we do under Rapid Response is free, and we'll thank our funders, the Murdoch Charitable Trust and the Rasmussen Foundation, for helping make that possible and helping us all navigate during this really challenging time. So we've got some office hours in here, and then we just put on a schedule. We're going to do a panel conversation about what's in the new federal tax bill with a panel of wonderful people joining us at Foraker to have that conversation. So we just put that out. Invite you to sign up for that as well. Gretchen's just going to populate the chat with like lots of things in there. So, and we really just want to hear from you about what you need and what it looks like to navigate this challenging time. We do have a form on our on that page, federal page, called real-time consequences. So if you are facing some funding challenges, policy challenges, whatever is happening for you based on what's happening in DC, or the ripple effect of what's happening from the state, we do invite you to sign, to fill out that quick form. That helps us help you and to know what's going on out there in the world. So just invite you to populate that and just keep us informed. We do have one of our team members who's on this call today. Mara Carnahan is reaching out to everyone who's been filling out that form for us and just checking in. So that just does give us a touch point and a way to check in with you, but also a way to advocate and have a larger conversation about what's going on in Alaska. And just my favorite thing to say about that is, don't assume we know. We need you to help us know what's going on out there. All right. Okay, so we did another series a couple weeks ago to talk about kind of funding in general. We talked about earned income, and we talked about how charitable giving plays into this conversation. We understand nonprofits are, you have your strength. You're either strong in your earned revenue and you're kind of dabbling. Dabbling would be 20% of your budget or less, kind of dabbling in the charitable, or you're strong in your charitable and you're dabbling in the earned income. In this class, we're really going to focus entirely on the charitable side of that equation, but again, recognizing that we have and we will continue to talk about the other kinds of revenue that you could generate. There's some really interesting information in our economic report about how nonprofits are funded. And if you're trying to kind of get a baseline of how you look against kind of all of that, I'd encourage you to walk yourself into our economic report and get a sense of how your organization is funded compared to others. Okay, so been just starting these conversations, right? Just with a recognition that some of you, like we have lots of people on this call, and you're probably all here for very different reasons. Some of you have lost your funding. Some of you, your funding is at great risk. Maybe you're in an all good state at the moment. You're stable and diversified and moving forward, and you just want to see if you could pick up a couple tips. Maybe things are status quo, but that's not a good thing. Status quo is actually not working for you. Or maybe you're just curious. And so just recognizing that you're probably all here for a huge variety of reasons, and lots of reasons I haven't listed on my screen. I'm going to do my best to thread the needle in our short amount of time together to try to meet a variety of these needs. And then we'll have time at the end for sure for some questions and some conversation. So just recognizing maybe lots of reasons why you're drawn to this conversation. Also, just want to recognize that this class can kind of not be all of the the things around teaching you how to be great at fund development. And it can't be that in 90 minutes, right? And so if you're really just starting out in charitable giving, you're new to this conversation, you really just need those fundamentals. Some of the things that we say today may just feel big and too big, and we just encourage you to kind of come back to Foraker and kind of engage with us in additional ways. For example, we have our Essentials in Fundraising series, which really are the building blocks to all these conversations that we're going to have today. That is on the calendar and scheduled, and you can sign up for those classes. We teach a class in fundraising planning if you've never done that before. We also have our Alaska Funders Directory if you're just searching for the corporate or foundation funder opportunities. We just released a fundraising cohort that's all about individual giving, that also has peer support, and Gretchen will put the link in the chat bar for that opportunity as well. And then we offer a ton of one by one help with boards and staff and volunteers, and just trying to figure out kind of where you are and what's going on for you. So we can't do these things in 90 minutes, but we can offer you a next step, and here are some of those next steps. So just recognizing that some of the things I say today might just feel like just too big, because you don't have those fundamentals in place. And some things I say today will be like, oh yeah, I got that. I'm good. I'm on the right track. It's, so maybe some of you are going to see it as more validation because you are already checking off those boxes. So again, everybody come into these conversations in a little bit of a different space. Try to meet you where you are in a few other ways if we can't meet your expectations in this moment. Okay, so with that, we're going to just jump in. I always like to start with some truths about what's going on out there in the world. So, let's start with some hard truths. So the hard truth probably for some of you is that any strategy that I might be able to offer you or Foraker might be able to offer you won't be fast enough. Corporations and foundations have their own funding cycles, and some of them are incredibly slow and careful and deliberate, and that's not a criticism, that's just a reality. And they just might not match with your timing. People generally, individual donors, they move at the speed of trust. So if they've never heard of you, they don't know what your mission is, they don't know why it matters, the chances that they're going to give you a lot of money is pretty low, right? People give you $5 if they don't know much about you, but they're not going to give you $5,000 if they don't know much about you, right? So for some of you, like, this is work that is, ongoing work, and it's important work, and you'll keep at it. And for some of you, it just won't be fast enough to augment or supplement some of the money that you have maybe lost from the decisions that have been made at the federal level. I think aligning your goals, your fundraising goals, to your reality around your capacity and the time horizon that you have to meet those goals are really going to be important. And that requires a lot of truth telling that I think organizations are trying to get, reorient around, and not always feeling like they have done that in a way that is enough. So I just want to encourage you to do that some more. And then I want you to I'm just going to have a careful list. I got a be careful list. So my be careful list is any unrealistic expectations that may be coming from within your organization, maybe a board member, well-meaning supporter, somebody who's got some unrealistic expectation that you're magically going to be able to make up the difference of federal funds with charitable giving. For every dollar, or as fast as you've lost it. Those are pretty unrealistic expectations. So we're not saying that philanthropy can't make a difference, but we are saying dollar for dollar, that math does not add up. Philanthropy generally is a leveraging tool. So it has to leverage against something. Maybe it can leverage against other philanthropy, but it's not going to just be a sole one gift and you've solved the problem, much of like how you have probably gotten some of your federal funds, which has been a single source. That's not how philanthropy works. So there's no just one funder that's going to just figure this out for you. That's not real. I think for some of you, you have been kind of living for a long time in what I'll call kind of a catch-up cycle, right? Where you're like, you raise just enough money to kind of catch up with yourself, and then just enough money to kind of catch up with yourself. And so for you, it's the other issue is that your goals aren't big enough, they're not high enough, they're not stretchy enough. We're not asking enough of our community to help us get ahead of these of the bigger goal, to ask a bigger question, to really solve some bigger issues in our community. And so for some of us, the issue isn't that we have unrealistic expectations around making the money. It's that our goals are too small. They're too low. We're not holding ourselves as able. We're not holding our donors as capable. We're not thinking big enough. And so we're always just in this cycle of just catch up, catch up, catch up. So really want you, for some of you, the answer is to think bigger, not smaller. And we'd love to have those one-on-one conversations with you. But I think maybe just quickly, I'll share a quick story to just accentuate that particular point, because I think it's a really common problem. I've been in the fund development business in the nonprofit sector for over 30 years, and I've seen this a lot, which is, people set a goal and they say, oh, we're going to raise $20,000 this year. And you go like, well, what difference does the $20,000 make, right? And it turns out that it just catches you up, or maybe it just keeps you just slightly behind, right? But if you raised $35,000 or $40,000, the reality is you could get out of that cycle. And we've seen that so much with groups. They just don't believe that they can do it, and so they don't try. Generally speaking, we talk about this in this class, but in everything else, donors give you what you ask for. And if you aim low, you will get low. So for some of you, that we have the opposite problem. We need you to aim higher. And that is both an emotional and a mental set of gymnastics, as much as it is a practical having a good plan. So we'll talk more about that as we go. I also just want to say, we're still unpacking and learning about the realities of the tax bill. There are some philanthropic pieces in the tax bill that we should be aware of. In a different time and space, we would have been celebrating, for example, what we've been working on decade on something we're calling kind of a universal charitable deduction for non-itemizers. And that's in there, and that's exciting. But it's offset and augmented by some things that are less exciting and less good for philanthropy. So there are some things in there that are really great, and I invite you to come to that roundtable conversation or that panel discussion where we talk about what's in the tax bill. But know that there are provisions in the tax bill that will incentivize philanthropy for people, but there are also incentives in there. There are also incentives in there that will de-incentivize, for example, corporate giving. So we're just going to have to kind of work through those and weigh those things out. We're still learning about what all those realities will look like as they play out as the bill gets put into practice. Okay, so that is just a little bit about some of the realities as we walk into these conversations. I'm sure you have more realities that you are dealing with as well, but those are the things that kind of on my mind as we walk into this 90 minutes of conversation. All right, so with that, just get myself oriented here. So if these are our truths, then the real question is kind of now what, right? And so for the rest of our time together, we're going to walk through what does it mean to respond to this moment then from a philanthropic space. And we have really 10 steps that we just mostly want to be as reminders to you. Again, we can't get into how you do all of these 10 steps. Those are different classes and different times or one-on-one conversations. But we do want to just add these 10 reminders to you as you walk your process with a philanthropic response. So the first is to know where you stand. And we talked about this a little bit in the last rapid response conversation. I think it's really important to understand why charitable giving is in your budget in the first place. Make sure you have good alignment with your whole organization, your board, your staff team, maybe your core volunteers, about what difference philanthropy makes in your budget. Is it a dabble? Is it a primary source? What does it do for you? Do you have alignment? So getting alignment, getting one voice in your organization, really important, always important, but very important right now. There are some really common answers to the why, but for many of you, you are now adding the last bullet on my list, which is to potentially shift your business model. You know, for a long time, philanthropy has had a purpose in your budget to help you be more resilient, to help you invest in your own ideas, to help you have flexibility to retain staff. And those are all probably still true, and that's great. And those are all really good reasons to have philanthropy in your budget. And now many of you who have been very reliant on government funding for a very long time for very good reasons, that currently is not available to you. So for some of you now, we're really thinking very differently about what your business model looks like. And that's a big jump for lots of you. And this step then will take a lot more time for those of you where that bullet is your reality than for others of you who have been answering these questions in kind of the way that lots of other organizations answer them, or the way that you have been answering them for a long time. So take the time that you need to make sure that your whole team, however you would define that team, is really on the same page about the role of charitable giving in your budget, in your organization, and why it really matters. It's never really about the money. It's always about what the difference the money makes. And so making sure that you've had those really important conversations together. Step number 2, as we walk in, so you've had these conversations, you're feeling some alignment. I just want to just a few action steps that you could take as you're thinking about the answers to those questions. For sure, making sure that you're understanding your current and anticipated revenue and expenses, making sure you're telling all the truth there, but also telling the truth about the role that philanthropy plays in your organization in terms of being set up to be successful at it. It does take internal structure, some of which you have and some of which you might not have yet. Organizations that are just starting out in philanthropy, it could take quite a while to build up enough structure to really thrive in this place. So you're going to start by making sure that you've allocated some resources in the budget for the amount of money that it costs to raise money. If anyone tells you it doesn't cost money to raise money, they're not being honest with you about the time and energy and the infrastructure that it takes. So you'll all, again, build that structure just enough. You'll do just enough to take you and match your goals of where you want to go. So just some ideas about some things to be thinking about. Assuming that you've had those conversations and you're having those good discussions in your room and you've got your budget squared away, we just want to remind you not to chase the money, right? It's not ever worth it to compromise. So we want you to stay very focused, mission, values, donor, connected. Your goal is to connect all those things all the time at every major step. We don't want you to compromise your values. We say this often, don't check your values at the door in the name of raising money. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for you. It's not worth it for the donor. It's not worth it for community. Don't do it, right? It's kind of there's not a lot of do's and don'ts in this work, but that is definitely a don't do it moment, right? So it's not worth it to compromise your mission in the name of raising money. It'll come back at you time and time again. You will actually raise less money, and you will have undermined all the great work that you have done to this point. So when we talk about being mission, donor, connected in a crisis, again, we'll get you these handouts in it after the fact, so you'll have these because there's lots of information. I'm not going to read you everything on the screen here, but just a couple of things to keep in mind, right? Just our goal is to be focused on the relationship, not the money. The organizations that raise the most money know that it's about relationships, not about money. The organizations that think this is about raising money raise less money. I know for some of you that is really counterintuitive because you're counting dollars or you have thermometers or you're, doing all the things. And I'm not saying don't think about money, because you're definitely going to have a budget and you're definitely going to have a plan that has the money in it. But at the end of the day, the relationship is the thing that matters the most. So you want to make sure, because donors invest in things that they care about. So we want to make sure that we're helping them feel connected to the things that they care about. This is true for corporate donors, foundation donors, and individual donors. They want to check in and feel connected to the things that they care about. So really thinking about connecting yourself to donor service, committing yourself to the resources that you need to help people understand what difference this mission is making in the community and how they can be part of that. And really remembering always that donors are investing in the future. If they give you $5, the future might be tomorrow. If they give you $5 million, the future could be much further out, right? But a gift today is really an investment for tomorrow. So helping them think about what difference they're making in the world is really important and always tied back to mission and values. It's never, we always say development is never about how much you need as an organization, right? And so we often say, right, and you'll see another slide later, right? Gifts go through you, not to you. No one is giving you money. They're giving money to the mission that is activated in your community because of your organization. So how do you help people feel that sense of connection? And often, right, we think of this as an opportunity for people to participate in something larger than themselves, an opportunity for foundations and corporations to participate in the communities where they live. And so how do we help them think about that opportunity? So that opportunity language, right? There's no have-tos here. There's no obligation here. There's just an opportunity. And really, just generally, as you are crafting your strategies, and we'll talk a lot about your strategies that we're going to use here as you try to raise more money in this moment, even though these strategies might be talking to a lot of people or many corporations or a few foundations, you really have to craft your messages as if you were talking to one person at a time, one foundation at a time, one company at a time, one person at a time. And if that just feels super overwhelming, then maybe you can break it down. And in fact, the more you break it down, the more what we call segmenting your audience, the more specific you can get, actually, the more successful you will be. So this kind of come one, come all strategy in fundraising generally does not work, or does not raise enough money or relationships enough to sustain or to solidify those conversations. So you really want to focus as much as you can. In our other classes at Foraker, we have a picture for what all of this looks like. This is the picture that we share. We teach whole classes just based on this picture alone. We call it our relationship-based fundraising cycle, where we put mission and donor in the center. That donor, again, could be a corporate, a foundation, or an individual donor. And we really commit to the whole cycle of the relationship. You'll notice is the percentages on the side, and that really speaks to the time and energy we spend in each of these phases. Notice an organization that's willing to kind of chase the money or check their values or mission at the door might be spending 90% of the time in the request and barely any of the time in the other places. So in this panic mode, in this crisis mode, you could be just focus on the ask, but it won't give you that resiliency that you need because it doesn't have the relationships in it or your mission in its core, right? So really just encourage you to think about kind of how are you spending your time and energy and making sure that you're really diversified in the work that you're doing so that you are doing this other work and not just asking all the time. We have really already seen organizations who were overly focused on the ask and really what we would call kind of a transactional exchange with donor and with the donor conversation, and they are losing people. They are losing trust in their community because they're just too focused in that place and not really focused on the other places. So again, if this is an intriguing conversation for you, you're really more curious about that, I really encourage you to come to the Essentials in Fundraising series where we go all the way around this circle and we kind of break it all down and talk about all the different steps. In this conversation, I'll just say the temptation in a crisis, the temptation in an urgent moment is to just go to the ask and kind of leave all the rest of it behind. But that is not what will give you the resiliency that you need over time. Right? And this is not just for the here and the now. We want you to be here for the long haul. So I've said this word crisis and urgency a couple of times now, so I just will highlight for you that the step number 3 is to know to differentiate between crisis and urgency, because in fund development work and fundraising work, we actually use urgency quite a lot. We talk about urgency quite a lot as a strategy, but we don't always lean into crisis. But when we do it in a really particular way. So by definition, we got some definitions on our screen here, right? By definition, a crisis is unstable, sudden change, impending change, a turning point. I think most of us would probably agree right now that lots of our places are in crisis, right? But urgency is something different. Urgency is this idea of being compelling and immediate and feeling a sense of importance, right? And so in fundraising work, what we often say is that your community can be in crisis, but not you. You have to be a solution to that crisis, right? You have to be ready to respond in a crisis, but you yourself can't be the crisis, right? But all of us can create urgency. And in fact, it is a really well-used tool in philanthropy. We use urgency a lot in philanthropy. We want our potential donors, corporations, foundations, individuals to feel a sense of urgency, to join us now, not later, to not wait till another day, but to respond now, right? So we tend to lean into urgency quite a lot. And we like that. And we like those messages. And it feels good and hopeful. And it often offers a solution, right? So if you're going to talk about crisis in fundraising, we have to place the crisis where it needs to be placed. If you go out and say, we're going to close our doors if you don't give us money, donors are likely to not respond to that as much as well as you hope they do. If you go out and say, our community is going to lose this service that is so valuable and so necessary, and this is how it changes hearts and minds and lives, and we are here to meet that need. Your community can be in crisis. Your organization has to be positioned to respond. Those are different messages, right? So if you choose to do the we're in crisis, we're going to close our doors if you don't give us money message, you get to do that once. I would recommend to you never do it, because you will lose a lot of trust in your community with that message, because it's all about kind of fault and blame, and it's not about solution. It also looks like, for whatever reason, you're in financial crisis, and it's really hard to make good financial decisions when you're in crisis, and it's really hard to think strategically, and it's hard to think about the future, and it's hard to do all those things. And so none of those messages are showing up with your donors. It just looks like you're trying to help them not close your doors. That's a very difficult message and a really difficult tightrope to walk. On the other hand, you can create urgency to offer a solution. You can say, our community our blank is in crisis. We're going to lose that service. We're not going to have that thing available. People's lives depend on it. People, however you want to frame all of those things. And then how do you position to meet the need and invite donors to join you in meeting that need? Will it keep you from closing your doors? Yes, probably it will, but it's a very different message. So I really want you to think about how you frame this moment of crisis. I will also remind you that there are many, many, many people who do not think this is a crisis. So your framing that this is a crisis will be confusing to some people. So it becomes a partisan conversation in some circles to frame this as a crisis. So that's not what you mean. That's not what I mean, but it can get framed that way. So I also want you to just be mindful of the politics that are seeping into almost every conversation, even when we don't mean for it to do so. I also just always remind us in these moments to just be wary of the overhead myth. It's kind of everywhere. The overhead myth in philanthropy shows up a lot. When you go out, we do it to ourselves, but it also happens at us. It's happening right now, kind of in the larger conversations across the country, right? Which is like these nonprofits aren't efficient, is a conversation, right? We're not effective. That's myth making, right? Because you know that not to be true. I know that not to be true, right? But this idea that then you try to prove how effective and efficient you are can lead us into a little bit of a corner. Um, the other way that we do it to ourselves is that you go out with a message and you say things like 97 cents of every dollar you give fund is going to program. Well, that's a lie. That's a lie, right? And it perpetuates a myth because the reality is that 100 cents of every dollar that people give is going to mission because you can't do mission without lights and heat and staff and program and computers and all the things that we call overhead. You can't do, right? So the overhead myth is you're supposed to do wonderful, magical quality programming without any operational costs. And that gets put on us, and we do it to ourselves in our messages to donors. So watch the overhead myth because it will seep in here if you're not careful. I'll pause here for those first three things: getting clear, knowing where you stand, not compromising your mission, your values, your donor connection, knowing the difference between crisis and urgency. Going to just pause for a moment, check the chat for questions. Gretchen, how are we doing here for questions? We good? So number four, so for many of you, you're going to frame this moment in time. We would encourage you to frame it, if you will, as a campaign. Lots of you have probably not, maybe some of you have thought about how you framed your fundraising as campaigns before, but some of you have never thought about your annual giving as a campaign, or maybe you've done a capital campaign in your life, and so that's been big and huge, and it's taken years to think about. In these moments, we're going to just think about like this immediate, acute issue that you're having. We're going to frame that. I'm going to use campaign language. It really just speaks to the idea of a campaign, really speaks to this idea that it has a start and a stop, right? Rather than the regular stuff that you're doing all the time that just has momentum, whatever that is, right? So this is probably going to, whatever you're thinking now in reaction to what's happening at the federal level, there are choices to be made if you decide to engage in a campaign. Again, the real moment here, a campaign has a start and a stop, right? As opposed to the stuff that you're just doing all the time. So I want to just frame out some nuanced choices right now. These are not good, bad, right, wrong, but they are choices, and we would just encourage you to consciously make these choices. So the first choice is kind of big, loud, and done. So like we have this immediate need, we have this acute moment, and we want you to help us meet this need right here, right now. It's fast, it's a lot or a little bit of money, it's a lot or a few donors, and you're done, right? As opposed to our whole funding model, our whole business model is now shifted. Our reliance on connection to government funding has changed forever. And we need a slow, focused, momentum building campaign that will build us towards a new business model. Very different, right? Loud, big, done, fast, slow, build momentum, build structure, build difference, build a business model. Not good, bad, right, wrong, but very different approaches, right? I'll get to your question, Charles, in a moment. Some of you this is the opportunity to really build a broader base. We would call this a grassroots campaign. Build a broader base. You want to build this base of donors. Why? Because maybe you actually want to build voices and credibility and trust in your mission, in your programs, in your community. And the money is less important than the momentum of building more people engaged in this conversation. And for some of you, you want to do more grass tops. So there's a grassroots approach and there's a grass tops approach. We would call that a top off campaign. You're just trying to fill the gap. And so for some of you, these are a handful of donors, probably higher end donors, higher dollar donors. And it's a few, and you're just going to kind of get to the gap that's missing. For some of you, in fact, for most of you, you're probably already thinking, how do I do this work by myself? How does my organization do this work? How do I have a campaign, right? But that's a go it alone strategy. I will tell you, I am already seeing around Alaska and around the country some build it together strategies where a couple of organizations are coming together, or a handful of organizations, or maybe all the nonprofits in a small Alaska community are coming together and building momentum together around philanthropy. We've seen this already in Alaska around efforts long ago when Pick, Click, Give first came onto the field. We saw groups come together and do some joint communication together and do some joint community building together and build something together. We've already seen some responses to the change in federal funding around specific groups of people who have come together and said, like, this is a group of people who are really impacted by the changes at the federal level, and we're going to work together as organizations to raise money. We're not going to think about it just me, and what I can do in my own organization, but we're going to do some work together. So again, not good, bad, right, wrong, but definitely a different strategy around how you're going to build your plan and how you're going to think about how you kind of, if you will, decide to rise the tide together. For some of you, again, this is a catalyst for new donors, right? This is different than build the base, right? Build the base might just be like engaging more of the donors you already have. This catalyst could be a catalyst for engaging new people who've not talked to you before. They know about what we know about the donors who are baby boomers and younger is that they care about causes, not agencies. They're not brand loyal, but they care about the bigger ideas. So for some people, this is a moment to bring the bigger idea that's been highlighted by these changes in federal policy. And it's a catalyst for new donors. And it's been a way to engage a new audience of people who really care about this cause, but they had no idea that your mission did this thing. We see this for corporate donors, for foundation donors, and for individual donors. For others of you, the place that's actually going to be the fastest and the kind of maybe the most return on your time investment is what I often refer to as and gifts. Going to the donors you already have and inviting them to give an additional gift. So inviting them for that bigger or second investment in a time frame where they would not normally be giving a second time. And that, for some of you, is absolutely the right strategy, right? Because you already have a base of donors, you already have a group of people who are super committed. That's not really going to work for your corporate and foundation donors, but it might. And some of our foundations are reaching out to known grantees with special funding opportunities given this current federal shift, and they're inviting those known grantees to ask for additional investments. That is a strategy that is absolutely happening. We have a list of some of those foundations that we know of that are doing that for their known grantees. But if you're already a grantee, you already know they're doing it as well. So there are some of those opportunities out there as well. Again, these are choices. My recommendation to you is that you're not deciding this by yourself, that you're coming back to your team, you're having a good conversation, and then you're building your plan based on the answers to these questions. Lots to take in this moment. So once you've decided, then you're going to define success. And when you're defining that success, then, right, of course, defining success is going to be more than money, right? And so I'll just list for you, right, that if the default answer is money, right, then maybe you'll have other definitions of success in addition to that. And so that kind of on the left-hand side is maybe your perspective about what success looks like. But there are other definitions of success from a donor's perspective, and donor, again, corporate, foundation, or individual, right? Just remembering that their definitions of success might be very different than yours and trying to match those things. And I mentioned that earlier, right? Money goes through you, not to you, right? So how do you, right? People aren't buying things. This is not a transactional moment. It is a transformational moment. They want your mission in their community, however they define community, whether that's geography or people or however they define community, and based on the things that they care about. Generally speaking, donors want to be part of something greater than they can be by themselves. So how do you define success that way? How do you define success by helping people meet the moment? Lots of people feel very like they don't know what to do in this moment. They want to do something. You could give them something to do here to meet the moment, helping them feel like they are making a difference in the things that they care about. This is right, we often say, right, don't let a crisis go to waste. This is an amazing moment to help your people in your community do something. Just make sure you've really thought out what that means as that so that they're doing matters to them and to you. I really do want you to write a plan when this is all said and done. That plan does not have to be overly complicated, but it does have to be written down. Can't be a team sport, which is where we'll end our time together. We can't be a team sport if we don't have a playbook to all work from. That is a plan. So really, again, just want you to think about, right, articulating your goals in your, that's more than just money. And then I really want you to think really hard about what happens, right? There's a thing out there called donor intent. There's something out there called the Donor Bill of Rights. You can find that on our website. Donor Bill of Rights is an internationally accepted document that says donors have rights. And one of those rights is that you will honor their intent. So if you raise money for a specific thing or a specific cause or a specific project, your responsibility is to spend it on those things. So generally, we love unrestricted operating cash because you're using metaphor. You're saying your gift funds things like, and it does things like this and like that, right? And so you're kind of living more in a metaphor. But when you say specifically, your dollar will do this, then you have to do that thing, whatever that thing is, right? And so I really want you to think about, of course, we all hope that you're going to be super successful in this moment, but what happens if you're not? What happens if you aim high and miss the mark? What happens if you aim too low and miss the mark? And you don't, and you have to close your doors anyway. What happens? What happens next, right? So what happens when the campaign is over? I want you to think about that before you even start. I want you to think about what happens if you don't reach your goals. I want you to think about what happens if your goal isn't big enough, right? And then I want you to be very realistic about the timeline for in and out, start and stop. I want you to be I don't want you to keep at this over and over and over and over again. So how you're going to decide that a little bit is based on your human capacity. Some of you have a board who is all in. They are ready. They have rolled up their sleeves. They are ready to go. Most of you don't, right? Some of you have staff. Some of you don't. Some of you have willing volunteers. Some of you don't. And some of you have a little combination of a lot of those things, right? So be realistic about what's really true and possible based on those answers. I hope you're wildly successful. I want you to plan for what happens if you're not. So I'll pause there. Questions? Any of those things about defining success, about the choices in a campaign, about the idea of a campaign in general?
Lori, there's still that question in the chat from Charles.
Oh, yep. Bring what to my spoken what bring to the table. I don't quite, yeah, I think what my translation of that, and I might have that wrong, but I think my translation of that is donors want to invest in things that they feel like matter, right? And we're looking for, when we put the donor and our mission in the center, we're looking for things that are mutually beneficial. And we define that in three ways: good for your mission, good for the donor because they believe in it, and good for community. So I think you have to show up and say, it's not just what can you give me? It's here's what I'm going to do. Won't you join me? Right? I think you can't just have your hand out. You can't just ask people to solve your problem. You have to say, we are positioned, our organization is positioned to respond to this crisis. Our organization is positioned to respond to the moment. Our organization is ready to meet people's needs, which are probably tripling in some of your cases, right? If we think about food security, for example, like our food organizations are just seeing an enormous need right now with less money. So you have to position yourself, and then you're asking the donor to join you in helping you solve that problem. Not to do it for you, not to do it instead of you, not to just give you money. Donors are not walking checkbooks. They're not ATM machines. They're not just money. They're people and corporations and foundations who believe in this thing. So how are you going to help engage them in the thing that they believe in? So that's my translation of that, Charles, which is just like, just don't say like, what can you give me? Right? Like it's not going to be about that at all. Yeah. Because people give you $5, but they'll do it once. They won't keep doing it. They want to be part of something with you, right? Think of a donor as part of your mission, part of your solution. I hope that gets to that. So I do want you to write a plan. This is the simplest version of a plan I can show you. We're happy to walk you through more complicated versions of a plan, maybe even simpler versions. This is a pretty simple version, right? Like it does require, we're, in other classes, in the essentials classes, we'll talk to you about how you get to the right gift number in the first column, but suffices to say, you'll put that number there. Then we're gonna, there's a gift chart that we would encourage you to write as the basis of your plan. We'll teach you how to write a gift chart in the essentials class if you've never written one. For those of you who know what gift charting is, this is based on a gift chart model, the first three columns. There's also tools in the toolbox about identifying donors and prospects. We're going to talk here momentarily about key messages. We're going to work, basically, this is that circle that is just in a linear format. How are you going to build relationships? We don't ask strangers for money. How are you going to build relationship before you ask for money? How are you going to ask? There's no such thing as one size fits all asking. So how are you going to do your ask? We'll talk about that in a moment. How are you going to say thank you? When are you going to start and stop? Remember, in campaigns, we start and stop. Who's going to lead? Is that a board? Is that a staff? Is that a volunteer? How much time do you need? Is there money? How much money will it cost to do that work? And was it successful? And again, success is not necessarily, I got the dollar. Success could also be, I got a new donor. I made a new relationship. I deepened a relationship. I had a better conversation. There could be all sorts of definitions of success that are also include money. Again, we teach whole conversations about how to walk through this process, but if this is not something you've done before, there are lots of tools in your toolbox to help you walk these steps, and just encourage you to have whatever version of a plan you have so that you can walk the steps. When you start to build your plan, you're going to recognize that you're going to have to focus on a very specific audience here. We're not come one, come all. I'm sorry to say the whole community doesn't care about you, even the ones you wish did. So this is a very focused exercise, especially in a campaign that's going to start and going to stop, right? Again, are you grassroots? Are you grasstops? What are you thinking about, right? High volume, low dollar, grassroots philanthropy. Are you thinking about high dollar, low volume, just a few donors with a few big gifts? That's a grasstops campaign. Generally speaking, the best predictor of future giving is past giving. So what have you already been successful doing? Probably starting there is a better strategy than starting somewhere else, right? Build on your strengths. So what are you already good at? Are you good at foundations? Are you good at corporate? Are you good at people? Great, start there, right? Don't start with the stuff you're not good at. Start with the stuff you are good at. Build from there. Okay? Some of you have lots of great tools in your toolbox. We want you to use them, right? And then we can work on the stuff you're not so good at. There is brand new data out there that is mostly shocking for people about where money comes from in this country. This is hot off the presses. But I think a good reality check about where money comes from and why at Foraker we spend so much time trying to help you get better connected to individual philanthropy and individual donors is because the reality is that's where the money is. And we don't often think that way in our Alaska organizations. Our non-Alaska organizations are typically more focused in corporate and foundation giving than they are in individual giving. And certainly when our Alaska nonprofits do individual giving, we often see them doing it more in a special event mechanism and not in a major gift space. So there's lots of room for growth here for lots of our organizations. Maybe this is the moment where you start to think about how you can grow in these spaces. But just generally thinking about and understanding how money flows in this country can be helpful and a little bit of a reality check for some of you. Individual giving are people who are alive, who are giving in a variety of ways. Giving by bequest, those are people who have passed on and have given a gift in their will or life insurance or other sort of estate planning vehicle. That number, of course, is on the rise because of the transfer of wealth happening from one generation to another in this country. Giving by foundations and corporations. The foundation number has also continued to rise over the years. Again, but where do we see giving happening is with individual giving. Again, we could spend lots and lots of time kind of dissecting and peeling apart and thinking about this data. Is very fun and interesting. And it's a little bit of something to kind of push up against as you think about your own budget and what that looks like. But just very generally speaking, our Alaska organizations, we could build some capacity in focusing on individual giving. And again, why we spend some time at Foraker thinking about that more often than not. But again, in a crisis, this is probably not the time in the moment to be doing that. If your strength is in one space, go where your strengths are. At the end of the day, as you get your plan, you're definitely going to want to focus your financial goals on that specific audience. And so again, for most of you, the best source of future giving is current giving or past giving. So current relationships, where do you have relationships now? It's going to be way faster than trying to build new relationships from scratch. Again, donors generally move at the speed of trust, right? So you could set a goal. Again, maybe you want to grow individual or corporate to new levels, right? Maybe these are those and gifts. Maybe you can some of you can have access to those emergency or meeting the moment foundation funds that are available. Again, we've published some information about that. Also, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, which is a national fundraising journal, which is online. You can find them on LinkedIn or you can find them online. They are actually keeping track of the national foundations that are kind of having a meet the moment funds around this federal shift. So going to existing relationships is always going to be a good strategy. Just had a great brainstorming session with one organization yesterday, just trying to connect the dots. Alaska's one big small town, so finding and connecting dots with each other can just be a really eye-opening moment about you actually probably have way more relationships than you thought of. You've just never invited them into this philanthropic conversation before. So here's the chance, right? For some of you, a really successful strategy could be to go back. Those of you who have a good donor database, you might go back to your past donors. We often call these people lapsed donors, people who have given you before but have not currently given. This will only work if you have a good donor database to track them. But we remind you that it's 10 times cheaper and faster to get back past donors than it is to get brand new ones. So for some of you, this is really about going back into your membership pools, into your donor pools, accessing your data, and re-engaging people that you have lost along the way. The chances are you didn't lose them because they stopped caring about mission. You lost them because you stopped communicating with them, or you had a change in staff, or there was some hiccup in the data or something. But it's usually us and not them, and they're pretty easy to get back. And so maybe that is the place where you will focus your time and energy. Again, happy to talk one-on-one with you around strategy. Each one of you is going to focus in a different place. But my general assessment is y'all have a lot more relationships than you think you do, and it just takes a little dot connecting to remind you that they're there. So need a thought partner, let us know. Okay, so when you decide how you're going to ask, we don't have time. Most of you don't have time for these kind of long and drawn out strategies. It would be nice if you could combine some asking strategies so that you could do a little backup to one thing, like a face-to-face ask with a follow-up letter, or a letter and a phone call, or an email and a face-to-face, or you might, if you can combine your strategies, that's great. You'll have a better response. But just generally, we want to focus on asking strategies that are going to have a good return for the effort. So I want you to remember, of course, we're going to be here for a while. This is not something that's just like, even though your campaign will start and stop, you're going to be here for a while. So set a goal that will allow you to be in these conversations with people for a while. You don't want to keep going back to that donor every month, every week, right? You want to come in, have an amazing conversation, and go out, right? And then come back at some sort of reasonable cycle, but not every week, every month, right? You don't want to do that, even every quarter. Don't ask too quick, which means just get a plan. Don't be too slow. You want to meet the moment. Don't under ask. I think most of you, my biggest fear for you is you're going to under ask, not over ask. Generally speaking, in philanthropy, we compliment people when we ask for too much, and we insult them when we ask for too little. Most of us, we get in our own way about the number, and so we just don't ask for enough. So be bold, be brave. We can always kind of have a conversation from there. Generally speaking, we ask for our biggest gifts and then our smallest gifts, generally speaking. Again, if you're running a grassroots campaign, that's not relevant to you. Generally, we ask for our donors who've been with us the longest to the ones that are brand new, generally speaking, right? Generally speaking, we start inside our organization with our asking, usually with our boards, and then we go further away. And the further away we go, the more we have to work on the relationships before we ask. Right? We start with existing relationships because they're the ones that are going to act the quickest. Again, we move at the speed of trust. If you've already got relationship, they already trust you. They already know you're a good steward of money. They already trust you to do the good work in community. They're going to be the people who are going to respond the fastest. And just remembering in the ask, you are part of a larger system and framework that's happening across our whole country right now. There's so much influx right now. So just be mindful of that as we think about that. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the messaging. Generally, in the ask, be specific. People give you what you ask for. Make it an opportunity, not an obligation. Have a sense of pride. I don't mean you being prideful. I mean, be proud of the work that your mission is doing. Don't apologize for your mission. It's amazing. It's doing good work. It's really important. Feel proud about that, right? Don't apologize for your mission doing good work. Lots of people out there want to make it sound like your work is not important. That's not the conversation you're having. Your job is not to validate that, right? Generally speaking, the bigger the donor, the more personal the request is. Again, we get much more into this in our essentials class about how to ask, but I'll just show you one last picture here just to be thinking about this. If your organization is this pyramid going up, the pyramid in blue is the donor's commitment to you, their trust in you. Notice that the asking strategies are on the right-hand side of the pyramids, right? Generally speaking, the bigger the gift, the more invested the donor, the more personal the request has to be. So again, you guys are all going to pick your strategies based on where your donors are hanging out. Most of you, you're not building a pyramid, you've got kind of a flat line. This is the opportunity to build the pyramid. I'll pause there. That's a lot. If none of you have ever done any of this work, this is a lot. Again, I'll just invite you to come back to those other conversations. For all of us, I would just invite all of us to remember in your asking, this is transformational, not transactional. Nobody's buying anything. Nobody's buying a can of food. Nobody's buying a service. Nobody's buying a this or a that. They are making sure that your mission is happening in community. They are making sure that your mission is changing hearts and minds and lives. They're making sure that your mission is making your community a better place. That's not a transactional conversation. So just really be thinking about how you are crafting those messages, which is step number 8. Step number 8, hone in your message. General guidelines for honing your message. Be clear, be consistent, be clear, be intentional. We like to say in fundraising, if it's complicated, you lost them. It cannot be complicated. It has to be super clear how people can engage, how foundations can engage, how corporations can engage. Remain nonpartisan. Lots of conversations out there right now. Just stay in your lane. Focus on your message, focus on your mission, somebody will try to politicize that. You don't have to help them. Not your job, right? Focus on action. Help people feel like they can be part of something better. Stay values focused. And if you've got some joy, bring it, because people need more joy in their life right now. So if you can help people find some joy in their world. And mostly right now, I think just people really just want to be part of, yeah, people just want to feel like they can be part of something greater. And that, Hannah, your example here is perfect, right? Like people are, like they're looking for new ways here. Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate that. Yeah. And so, Hannah, then I would just say philanthropy leverages against it can leverage against itself. So if you could celebrate that, even if the donor was anonymous, but you could celebrate this act of giving and invite other people to consider that opportunity, it will leverage against and it will grow more giving in that way. So that's super exciting. And that brings authentic joy. Also what you're calling being giddy. I'm in it for that. So, yeah, I think like that. So how do you use some successes to show people what's possible? Again, I feel like right now people want to do something. You can give them something to do by showing them how others have acted. And this is a great example. Hannah's example is really great. As you're crafting your message, just remind you always again, right? Does it matter? Right? Does it feel like it matters? Does it have enough weight to it to feel like it matters, right? Does it move mission forward? I think right now some of us are our organizations are scared into being stuck. So what would it look like to move forward? Not just status quo, not just stuck, but forward. What would that look like? What does it mean to activate your donors and your prospects to move forward with you, not for you, not walking checkbook, not ATM machine, but with you? What would it look like in your messages to bring people with you, to bring foundations with you, to bring corporations with you? What would it look like? What would your message, how would your messages change? I'm really thinking about that. I'll just recognize as well, I've said it a couple of ways here, but I'll say it more pointedly here. This is bigger than you, right? It's bigger than your organization. I know it feels super personal and really hard, and it feels like you are the center of some bullseye here, but it's bigger than you, right? And so I really want you to be thinking about this collaborative mindset, this abundance mindset. I've read some remarkable I've seen some remarkable campaign messaging already that basically it's just like, this is a big tent. And there's a lot of people who are impacted by these decisions. And how do we raise money together, right? How do we engage our community together? I've also seen some messages that are like, it's just about us. It's all about us. Those are going to land differently with different people. So I just want you to feel like, what's your organizational response to that, right? Again, you want to go it alone, you can go it alone, not as a choice. If you can acknowledge that there's a larger conversation going on in your community and that your mission is tied to larger causes, remember that donors care about causes generally before they care about agency. They're generally not brand loyal. Unless they're of an older generation. They want to make sure, in Hannah's case, that no one is hungry in her community. Yeah, I want to be part of that, right? It just so happens that it's her organization that's feeding people. So that's where the gift is going. But their motivation is to make sure, especially in endowment, their motivation is to make sure that people are fed. Just so happens her organization is doing it. So great. Right? So how do we do that? Right? How do we do that? And just recognizing, right? Lots of maybe just what's possible. Maybe this is the opportunity in your organization you've been looking for to ask those bigger questions. And I really invite you in this moment to really think about how you bring your cultural and organizational values to these conversations, right? I'll just remind you again, don't check those at the door. Your cultural and organizational values tell you so much about your messages, about how you want to show up in these conversations, about how you want to position yourself, about how you want to engage in the philanthropic work. At the end of the day, philanthropy means love of humankind. How do you want to engage in that from a cultural context? How do you want to bring your organizational values to that conversation? Right? Even in a crisis, I don't want you to let that be compromised. Step number 9 is making sure that you're not doing this all by yourself. This is no time to go it alone. A philanthropy team of one is not a team. It's just a recipe for burnout, friends. So again, all of you have different compositions to your team. If you're trying to figure out, would this person make a good team member? Maybe you don't have any staff. Maybe you don't have willing board members, but you've got great volunteers and they're trying to figure out how to be helpful. Here are some criteria that we're looking for in a great team member, a great paid, unpaid, whatever, right? Somebody who wants to put relationships in the center of that work. Somebody who can speak from the heart about why this mission matters in this community. Somebody who is willing to listen to donors because ultimately it is as much about them as it is about you. Somebody who has some skills that you actually need. That would be helpful, right? What's the complement to the skills you already have? Somebody that actually believes that fundraising could be a little bit fun, right? This is not just treachery here. There's the first 3 words in fundraising is fun. Put a little fun in it, right? Somebody that understands or at least is willing to learn that there is science. Like every tool I've shown you today, there's science behind those tools. They're not just good ideas. There's proven science behind those tools. So somebody, if they don't know the science, they're willing to learn. They'll come to Foraker, they'll go somewhere else, they'll learn the science. Someone who is willing to bring time, money, energy to the table. It's going to take time, money, and energy to do this work. And someone who wants to be in a part of a team. This is not a solo, how much money can I just go out and raise all by myself kind of moment, right? So my guess is these people exist in your world. Maybe they're volunteers, maybe they're on staff, but they don't have this job title, right? Maybe they're in your boardroom, but they don't want to be on a fundraising committee, but they'll do this, right? There's all sorts of ways to engage the team, right? So I'll just say again, this is no time to go it alone. Put your plan together in as many forms as possible to engage as many people as possible, and then clarify what the expectation is for their participation. I think that there's a big difference between hoping and expecting your board to participate and actually asking them to do a thing. You're going to have to ask them to do a thing. You're going to have to ask your volunteers and your staff members to do a thing. You can't just help. The expectations and assumption are not going to be your friends here, right? So helping people get to yes, maybe that looks like pledge forms or surveys about how people want to participate. Maybe that looks like job descriptions. Maybe that just looks like a cup of coffee and a good conversation. Whatever that is, make it real, make it living, be willing to change it as you learn. Maybe you don't know what any of that is, and so you're just gonna meet with each person one by one by one and find out how people want to engage. Right? That's fine. If you're not the executive director on this call, please engage that person if you have them in those meetings. The other strategy that I just invite you to think about is to how you weave development into the things that you're already doing. This is no time to try to reinvent new wheels here. We want you to weave, if something, you already got something going on, weave fundraising around it. Don't try to invent something new. You're already engaging with people. Great. Bring fundraising into that conversation. You're already putting out a newsletter. Great. Engage fundraising in that card. You're already putting out a blast, some sort of e-blast. Great. Like whatever you're doing, just try to weave it in rather than trying to create new things. You're going to definitely have to provide some orientation, training, support to whoever's on your team so they can be successful. You get extra bonus points if you've got some way to evaluate whether all of this was successful. That's a bonus point for most of you. Happy to give it to you. But again, it's not like, it's not a check the box thing. This is really an iterative process. Everybody is learning as they go. Generally speaking, your team's going to be the most successful if you could all just agree that there's a place at the table for everyone, and not that some people are better or worse because some people are askers or not askers. We're going to need planners. We're going to need people who can think and strategize. We're going to need good writers. We're going to need people who can organize things. We're going to need people who are quiet thinkers and think out loud people. We're going to need a lot of everything. We don't just need a lot of askers on the team. We need some askers on the team, but not all of them, right? Generally speaking, you're going to break this plan apart into as many pieces as possible to make things easy and small. Don't give somebody the whole plan, give them a little piece, right? Within people's time frames, where the expectation to participate is clear, where it's clear that all of this work that you're going to put in is going to matter. And that there is some sort of system to support everybody, right? That we're not all just running in 20 different directions and running into each other. I think a lot of that is a plan and communicating about that plan. I know lots of this stuff is stuff that some of you are just doing all the time, but you're just going to ramp it up in this moment to meet this moment, right? So some of this is fundamental for some of you and some of this is brand new. You're just going to take the bite where you can. At the very end of the day, you're going to put it all together, put all the pieces together, and put it in again in as many formats as you need to then launch this campaign. Generally speaking, if I took all of those things that I just said, all steps through 1 through 9, it would look something like this. Define a timeline for every major effort, tie a key message to every major audience and every major effort. Give us a champion. Give us a person who's going to lead in that effort. And then weave revenue, if you can, into everything that you're already doing rather than trying to create new stuff, right? It's going to be the fastest solution to get you to the next place that you want to be. And my hope is that the next place you want to be is something that looks like growth and not just looks like more crisis coming next, right? So again, for some of you, that means thinking a little bit bigger than you've been thinking. And for others, it means starting out from scratch because you have not done this before. Wherever you are, we're here for you. It's a lot. It's a lot. We're going to give you all the slides so you can reflect on it and think about it. We have about just about 12 minutes or so until we're done here. And so we're going to do this in 2 ways. I'm going to ask for just open questions about anything that we talked about in this conversation, these 10 steps. And then I'll do just a quick end of the time, 5 minutes. We'll stop recording and we'll have people just have a moment to just check in with each other in smaller rooms. So first we'll just take questions. I know it's a lot to absorb. Well, I'm going to ask Gretchen to turn off the recording.